Great. Let's wait till some people come in. There's just the three of us. I'm going to go over.
We look over what we read it. Yeah, it's listed as live. Okay.
We're live. Let's go to LinkedIn, and I'll post there as well.
I'll quote tweet this.
Let's start to promote this and see if we can get some people in.
Okay, AI Spaces.
Okay, I've posted on LinkedIn and Twitter. Moby, if you can do, get Moby to do the same.
Well, Moby, it's already posted.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good to see you. I've never seen you before.
Hey, man. Good to see you too.
Yeah. It says 3 people, but there's only you and me, so I don't know who the third person is.
You're not going to see it in the same way as we would on Spaces. It shows a little eye. So we currently have 9 viewers.
Oh, we do? Fabulous. Okay, let me know when it hits a little more. Let's get a few more people in, and then I'll kick it off.
Guys, come hang out with us, whoever's there.
Welcome, everyone. This is a new experience for us as well as you.
Welcome, everybody.
Props to you, Achilles, or Dapper.
Dapper. Oh, yeah, I'm not actually streaming on Dapper, but I retweeted on Dapper, so that's good.
That's cool.
Cool.
That's good.
Welcome, everybody. Good to see you guys.
Let me kick it off. Okay, so, yeah, you, me? I'll do it. So, this week's news, it really makes one thing clear if you start looking at the headlines. The artificial intelligence, it's really shifting from a software feature really into a system of power, and it's touching economics, geopolitics, and infrastructure. I think the real story, we keep saying it's not just models. It's who controls the networks, who controls the compute, and the autonomous agents that are now beginning to operate inside them. But I think the deeper pattern is this, that it's splitting into 4 parallel battles. And what we're seeing is a battle for power, a battle for infrastructure, a battle over belief and social meaning, and a last one, a battle over execution and control. And this split, I think, really matters because it's showing over the next couple of years who, what's going to get decided, not by being just better models, but who's going to govern them, who can afford to run them, who's going to emotionally project onto them, as we're seeing now, and who still has the authority when the systems begin acting on their own, as they are now. So I think the question we have today is, are we prepared for a world where AI systems are no longer tools we control? They're now AI actors competing with each other across the internet, the economy, and even, as we've seen in the last 2 weeks, national security. So let's review some of the headlines and we'll see where we can see something deeper. So the internet itself is starting to change shape as automated systems compete for attention, data, and commercial advantage. We're seeing a report coming up that AI bots are crawling retail sites at 198 times more than Google. And I think this is a signal that the web is really shifting from human browsing to machine interaction, and it's only going to accelerate. At the same time, we've got governments pulling AI into geopolitics. Startups are now building military-specific AI systems. Besides Anthropic and OpenAI, there are a number of other companies jumping into this. And that starts to raise questions about the role of Silicon Valley and all the other tech places around the planet for the next generation of defense technology. Meanwhile, we have an economic layer that's beginning to emerge. We've got Mastercard executing its first live agentic financial transaction that happened this last 7 days. And that's really a sign that autonomous software may soon participate directly, if it's not already, in markets. And underneath all of that lies more physical conflict with the race for compute. We're seeing that with infrastructure. The demand for AI infrastructure is exploding, with reports that CPU demand is exceeding expectations because of agentic AI jumping onto this whole thing with all their applications. And that really highlights the real battle, that it's not about models, but it's about chips, power, and data centers. And when you roll these things all together, the stories that are framing today's discussion, we're seeing the bot wars beginning. We're seeing the Pentagon entering the AI era. We're seeing autonomous agents testing the foundations of commerce. and this infrastructure race we continually talk about is really going to decide in many ways who controls the future. What are your thoughts, Ms. Achilles, around this whole thing, given all the changes? I mean, I think the last 7 days we saw a lot around, Anthropic getting tossed out by the U.S. defense. But nevertheless, the bunches of stories where, the AI helped apparently the U.S. defense to choose the top 1,000. They're saying that the AI is helping them to cope with the vast amount of information and data coming out of the war theater. We're definitely in a whole new world.
We are. And we also see some errors. There's rumors that an AI error led to striking of a school recently.
Yeah.
There's no conceivable future where AI running warfare is a good thing for anyone. Just period. It's not a good thing for anyone. I don't care who you are. If you're making money on it right now, props to you, man. But this is not good for us collectively. Anthropic is doing the right thing. I see them fighting back in court now, which is great. They were labeled a supply chain risk, and that's the first American company to ever be done so. Doesn't make any sense. They just said that you can't autonomously kill. You can still kill using it, as far as Anthropic was concerned. You just have to review the data and approve it. And that was not good enough for the current DOW is the acronym that's been changed to. So, yeah, that's that. I don't know what more to say about the autonomous running kill chains other than we should be doing it. And I hope we don't, but we are going to, at least until we don't, right? We're going to until we don't. Hopefully that'll be sooner rather than later with less lives lost. Some of the more exciting things, though, you did mention one thing in the intro that you think this is going to be more towards centralization. I would disagree. I spent the week taking some time and fine-tuning some models to work on my local system, which, I use an AI to help me, which I suggest everyone else does. But I can run probably 5 or 6 fairly competent coders. I just open source some software, so all of you guys can too. It's on dappit.io/birdsnest, dappit-io/birdsnest. You can run local models and do most of what you're using ChatGPT for right now. You can search the web, you can search YouTube, you can pull videos. This is a really simple piece of software too. Any of us are capable of building this or running it. You can even generate images locally, not paying for an API. So you can run an image model directly on your Mac. And this is, I believe in sovereignty, right? That's why I like crypto so much. And I think that's the direction we should be looking at. Another bit of news. Mac just came out with an update for their studios. So you can cluster 4 of them together and run really big, almost frontier models. Like Kimi K2.5 can now run, don't get me wrong, it's a $40,000 setup to do it, but that's still way better than
consumer-based, but yeah.
It's consumer hardware. It's just, that's expensive for a consumer.
But wait till June. Apparently June, the new, whatever it is, Mac Studio Pro Ultra is going to come out. And that'll be on the Mac 5 chip. So I'm hoping that will actually be a massive jump. But you're right.
Well, with that being said, even my 6-year-old, 5-year-old Mac Studio M1 Ultra can comfortably run Qwen 3.530B, which is able to autonomously code anything. I made a Mahjong game this week with a local AI, right, just to do it. And you can do tool calls too. That's the most important thing, is it can actually, push to Git and do all that kind of stuff. So I think we can all run a lot more than we realize. I got bored. So Louis, I took an old laptop that my wife had from college in 2016. I took a mini PC from 2014 and an old Android phone that I had lying around.
Okay.
And I threaded the 3 of them together. Each one runs local image, AI, and then database. And I'm not saying you want to use it. It's not like the most fun experience, but it works, right? We can do more than we realize.
Right. Okay, so let me just tie a bow and close off the military stuff, because there's some 2 other headlines I do want to mention, which kind of give us maybe some hope. OpenAI robotics leader, he resigned over concerns with the Pentagon deal. And that's the first thing. So we've got people who are saying, no, don't do this, we're leaving. And the other is that, I think Anthropic's stance is actually, they're trying to set some boundaries. And Microsoft and Google have stated they will not cut ties with Anthropic over this feud between the Pentagon and Anthropic. And in fact, Anthropic, I think, came up in the news today. They're filing lawsuits because it's discrimination against their business and a whole bunch of other things. So given that said, the other parts of the AI that's happening is the whole agentic economy, right? Mastercard did the first live agentic transaction in Singapore. WireX agents are conducting on-chain finance. We're seeing agentic AI shifting the whole digital landscape. We're seeing lots of interesting stuff happening on the blockchain set and crypto set and linking all those together. Mastercard also did an announcement that they won't recognize AI agents unless they're cryptographically signed. That was in today's news headlines. So I think on the economy side, we're starting to see some guardrails, thank goodness, and some clear thinking about how we actually going to maintain security around the financial activities that are going on. But nevertheless, it is exploding really fast in terms of agentic AI and its introduction into the economy. I mentioned the web scraping, 198 times more than humans is now AI agents. And I think our economy at some not too distant future will start to be dominated by agentic AI transaction. Obviously, it's not now, but I think I wouldn't be surprised in the next 2 years if it isn't a significant part of our GDP or the global GDP, if that.
You say it's not a significant part of it now. I think what most people don't understand is the financial networks are controlled by perhaps not AI, but at the very least algorithmic trading.
Right. That's
true. There's a distinct difference, right? One thing executes based on So, I can't see. How do I frame this? There's no way I can comfortably navigate the world with a pen any longer, right? If I wish to work in the digital world, I have to have a keyboard either on my screen or a keyboard here. Pens are gone, man. I mean, I write in my hand still. That's because I'm old. Doesn't make sense otherwise. We're not going to be able to comfortably navigate the world without AI in the same fashion very soon, right? In all aspects, finance, the web, your bank, a whole lot.
Everything's going to be, the primary interface to technology will be AI because it's just becoming too complex. And they're all coming together, right? I mean, they're almost seamlessly integrated, if not now, then very, very soon across everything. And so because you don't want to just do one thing on one platform or one area, you typically want to do things which will mean you need to combine a whole bunch of stuff live. And you and I have talked about this in the past that, instead of websites, and there was AI to UX headline that popped up 2 days ago, where they're now designing live stream off websites structured by AI. So those standards are now being built, and that was in the last 2 or 3 days in the headline. So, it's going to be interesting because then that will allow hyper personalization with each of us. So, it'll be interesting because your view of the web will be really different to mine or anyone else's. I mean, that's going to be the interesting thing.
That's already starting, right? We're in the midst of that. I remember I had a business partner who was politically extraordinarily different from me, right? And one day I logged into his computer and every ad, everything I'm seeing on social media, everything is completely different.
Yeah.
And I realized, that's like we're in siloed worlds, right? I get my content, he gets his content. Now I think that's going to extend as far as the user interface, right? Why do I want to look at the same screen that Lewis likes, but I like mine in a different manner? AI is going to make that all possible very quickly. I got one for you. Have you heard of a company called Talus?
Yeah.
Did you use the build?
Sorry? No, I haven't used the build, but I've heard of them. Someone mentioned it actually in the last 3 days to me.
So if you guys want to see something amazing, everyone on the space, go to taalas.com, go to product, and go to try our chatbot. It is an ASIC AI.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned this last week. You're the person who showed me. Yeah.
I'm still talking about it. The speed and the efficiency of this system is going to change everything, right? Once we have our own little ASICs that handle stuff, it'll be able to compute at hundreds of thousands of tokens per second. Right now, hundreds of insane, right? Imagine thousands, then hundreds of thousands, far faster than we could ever imagine. And the data throughput's just going to go through the roof.
Yeah, I'm thinking, we're seeing, from China, the absolute massive AI developments around humanoid robots. I can see the time come when, we'll have how will we interact with technology? Will it be with a screen like we're doing now? Will it be like with our phones, right? Or will we get to that point where we might have a phone, but I'll just turn around to the robot and say, I really need this, or it will anticipate what I need and do it ahead of time, right? I think anticipatory AI is the next level that we will start to see, where it will actively anticipate what you want and start to do it. It'll initially check in with you, say, hey, I'm going to do this. Is this a great idea? And you go, yeah, just do it. And after a while, it'll be interesting. We might not end up interacting that much with what we now call technology, because it might just happen as a consequence of, it knowing us and being hyper customized to us. I think that's that. So this AI anticipation level, I think we're probably, I never want to predict, but maybe 3 to 6 months away from seeing some active roles around that. You can see it with AI agents. It's obviously an inherent thing in AI. In fact, I saw there was AI agents that will monitor your code and fix it on the fly. I saw that in the last 2 days. So on the code management, on the fly management of problems is now starting to come up to speed as well. So the next step is anticipation and doing it ahead of time. And basically, I think we'll then start, like, we're so used to getting, updates on our phone. Now it seems like I'm getting them every damn week. But I think what we'll see is that will go away, because it will just happen automatically on the fly. It'll detect a problem and it'll go, oh, let me fix that, bang. And so I think, the idea of patches and updates as we perceive them could also disappear as well. Which is really interesting.
We're going to have AI managed systems quickly, and that just makes more sense from a CI/CD standpoint, right?
Well, we can't manage it because it's become too complex.
I
think AI is making stuff so complex that we can't manage it. I think that's also another impact, that the complexity is scaling because of AI involvement.
Louis, I think we did it. And I think that's why we're seeing a pretty major shift in the software world, to where it used to be you required money, tons of money, and developers to achieve a task. And now me, with a good workflow and a few agents, can pretty much build any piece of software out there. And the reason isn't that we made it more complex, it's that it was originally complex and the barrier to entry has now been lowered, right? So that complexity used to require a huge amount of humans to operate within it. And now this has just made it so you or I can do it ourselves with enough education and organization. Touch on one thing you said, though, memory. The biggest issue with model currently is memory.
Yeah. In the newsletter, there's the whole SaaS apocalypse, right? Where the finance market went crazy because they went, oh, all the software companies are going to go broke because of this. Bank of America came out with a report around it. They're warning that they still think they're warning the software sector as the Anthropic AR doubles down to 19 billion, right? So people are still worried that Oracle, Salesforce, these companies, their value might decrease as a consequence, because over time, as new businesses come, they go, I can't afford to pay Salesforce. I can't afford to pay Oracle. I'll just talk to the AI and it'll build it for me. And it'll be custom to what I want. So why should I pay, $20,000 a month or whatever in subscription fees when I can just do this with AI? So
what does IBM do right now?
Well, IBM's different because they do both hardware and their OS, and they're doing a whole bunch of stuff. So I think IBM's got some problems, but I think they're a little bit different. And given how, they're still running COBOL in the government, right?
Can now code.
I saw that.
Right.
But I mean, it's going to take time to transition everything across. But I think some of the days are numbered with the whole thing for sure. But that brings me to the biggest thing that we've talked about, which is infrastructure, right? That's becoming the battlefield, the real battlefield, because it means control over the chips, the compute capacity, the data centers, the energy supply, and the cloud infrastructure, right? So those are all constrained by physical resources. And so we're seeing it in the news. Governments and corporations are racing to secure this infrastructure in order to power this next generation of whatever we're going to do in AI. AMD had a headline, CPU demands exceeding expectations. They blame the rise in agentic AI. Everyone's blaming agentic AI. AI chip exports are facing tighter US controls, which I'm not sure if that's a good thing, because it forces other countries to build their own semiconductor plants, their own stuff. Data center new builds, interesting, diminishes, demand rises. And I saw there was a story that I think it was OpenAI or someone was walking away from some of the Stargate stuff. But Norway is jumping onto the whole Stargate stuff for them. So we're seeing different things happening with sovereign AI, forcing different countries to build infrastructure. And it's not just data centers. New power lines for AI are also stirring local anger. So, as this infrastructure is built up, as we've talked about for where you live and for others, to build up the electrical infrastructure is also causing stress on the entire system. So this is clearly that these battlegrounds, like I said, are splitting up, right? And whoever controls or starts to be involved in any one of these, or as many as possible, are really going to start to dominate the whole AI as we move forward. It's not just a simple race anymore, which is really interesting.
I agree. Okay, so you remember the .com bust and how everyone was down from the AIs and
we all went through that, or most of us.
I don't think it's going to be AI itself in the way that we perceive it. I think it's going to be physical infrastructure, because we are basing our calculations. It's like if someone said in 1985, a server was the size of this room, right? How much land mass do we need to store America's data today, right? It wasn't like an intelligent calculation. Something like Thales that I mentioned to you, right, showed me that like we're using the old hardware for the new software, which is AI. And based on that math, we need all these things, more data centers in space and underwater, and we have to do all this crazy stuff. And we're going to see a revolution in the hardware pretty soon, to where I don't think that'll be. Thales, like I just personally saw that revolution myself with the speed and function of that machine, and it uses as much energy as my heater does. Like not even my main one, the little guy. So as AI hardware adapts to AI software and we create new bespoke machines, I don't think we're going to have as much need as we think we are. I think this is a temporary gold rush, and then it's going to pop.
I'm not sure. I think enterprises will want to control their data and they'll want to control their infrastructure. Right now, for consumers, I absolutely agree. It'll get decentralized. We can all run our own models, right? But I think the major corporations that are trying to run their business, they're still going to want either cloud, on-premise, hybrid, whatever.
No, I just think the cost of running that cloud is going to go down. I'm not trying to say that it's going to go decentralized. I wish it would. It will for me, right? I'm a big fan of that, and like I believe in sovereignty, but most people don't care. Most people want to use it on their phone or do something that that isn't capable of. No, I think the amount of hashing that has to get done to run these models is going to go down so drastically that our existing infrastructure won't be enough. Is what I'm saying. For cloud and for all the things that we're.
I hear you. I'm just looking at there's a headline: Nscale raises $2 billion Series C funding at a $14.6 billion valuation. They're saying that the Nscale's funding round is a major infrastructure signal because it shows investors now view AI data center capacity as a category worth financing at industrial scale. So I think we're seeing some different, flows going back and forth. Yes, it's true. We're seeing incredible advances in chip technology, MPUs, GPUs, and the ability to use large models on smaller amounts of hardware. I think that's absolutely true. That said, it seems like I mean, remember when, with networks and fiber, right? The amount of information you can carry on a single fiber is humongous. But even so, we've managed to still overwhelm that and need more and more and more. So what I'm saying is that our hunger at an industrial level will still continue to be larger than our ability to supply it. I think that's going to be true for some significant time. It's like highways, it's like you put in, let's add an extra 3 lanes of highway, it gets filled, right? So it seems as if, infrastructure never is always lagging behind in this, especially around AI, the need for additional AI, even if we're seeing advancements in other areas.
Let's assume 2 things. So if what you're saying is correct and what I'm saying is correct, that means we have to agree that what's going to fill that highway is way bigger, more capable models. And that will be interesting to see because, okay, so when we started DAPIT, we used Claude 3.5, I think. Maybe it was 4. And now it's up to Opus 4.6. And the context tokens, so the ability for the AI to understand the amount of tokens, has went up 5 times since then. We started in August. So if what you're saying is right, that has to be because we come up with, like for the internet, right? The reason that fiber cable didn't last, like they theorized, for 50 years was because the amount of throughput went up so rapidly. If the amount of throughput goes up with these new, more complex models on more efficient machines, I can't even imagine what they're going to be capable of.
Like, remember this. You pointed out to me last week that you don't just deal with one model. Each model is broken up. If you want to do images, it's one thing. If you want to do text, it's one thing. And what we're seeing now is a continual fragmentation with AI agents, right? And they're saying that a lot of the need for compute now is coming from AI agents, whether it's in finance or retail or whatever. And I think that's just going to explode. And so while, yes, certain models, will get better and better and better, I agree with you, they'll become more efficient. But the implementation and deployment of AI agents is only going to explode, whether it's for usage in finance or retail or anything else. And also because if you look at how data is created at the moment, in all terms of, humans create, 30 petabytes or whatever. If you look at the machine-to-machine sensor data, it's at least 3 times bigger than that, right? So you start to evolve AI agents with not only human creation data, but machine created data and IoT, it just completely explodes. And so, I think that's maybe where we might see this continual need for infrastructure, that these people are throwing billions of dollars at, and, countries are creating sovereign AI to do so. So I don't think there's any shortage of people thinking up ideas to suddenly go, hey, let's use an AI on that idea and create it.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually. I do think that's going to be a huge part of the throughput. Did you see this week? I don't know. Okay, so we write chips with this thing called UV laser spectrography, I think. It's a really, really complex way of taking a UV laser and running it onto the silicon, and that's how we get our transistors. These guys took it and they applied it to glass, silicon board glass, like you would an old Pyrex. And it went from being able to store gigabytes to, I think it was like petaflops or something insane, right? Just it can't read write, it can just write, and then you can read it.
It's permanent.
It's permanent. But imagine if we moved to like crystal-based storage and we, saw that tick up there. I think tech is really gonna, necessity is the mother of invention, right? And we now have a great necessity for better storage, better batteries, better compute, better everything. And I think AI is going to drive a second boom along all of those lines.
Yeah, just a story came up from IDC. They're projecting that for Japan alone, their AI infrastructure shift is no longer experimental, it's now structural. They're saying there's going to be a 7-fold expansion of AI infrastructure for Japan alone over the next 3 years. So 7 times in 3 years. That's kind of pretty radical. And they're absorbing it into their national economic planning. It's not going to be treated as a niche. And that's so essentially the build out is becoming sovereign national policy for Japan. And I assume they're not the only ones doing that. I would assume that certainly we know India is doing that. And it looks like the rest of the planet's going to follow on a country by country basis. So it's the whole infrastructure stuff really is exploding. Story on Germany out of Reuters. Germany's sovereign compute pushes gets concrete. There's a Reuters report that Europe's sovereignty concerns are now producing actual physical infrastructure, not just policy speeches, which they tend to do a lot. Apparently, there's a Bavaria facility positioned as a step towards domestic control over AI compute in the market. So again, the countries are worried about, which other countries are controlling their AI compute, because obviously that's a massive listening point. So again, sovereign compute is starting to dominate stuff, as I think they're all waking up, going, we don't want other people controlling it. We want to have our own.
It is such a massive security risk. I understand. These systems can pipe data back and forth into whatever they want, if someone directs them to. And so last week we talked about the Anthropic DeepSeek argument of distilling, and I am of the personal belief. I was sitting around outside actually watching my son play. It just kind of came to me. All models are going to be distilled into all other models, and that creates a pretty massive. If I'm a developer, right, and I see that your model is really good, Lewis, at reading certain types of files and running tools around them, right? Why would I build that? I'm simply going to go to your AI and I'm going to say, hey, give me 10,000 examples of you using this tool and how that works. And I'm going to take that data, I'm going to go train my model on it. And that's exactly what the industry is doing. But that inherently creates like a global security risk, right?
Right.
One person,
It creates a point of aggregation, right?
Yes.
So my web browser is an aggregator. I can go to any other website through one interface, right? And so what you're saying is there will be a point of aggregation across models, right? Where I have a need, and instead of me being forced to use a particular model, the criteria of my need will define what model I want to choose, right? And so the point of aggregation that allows that to happen, to switch, is going to become really powerful. And whether it's a humanoid robot doing that, or a phone technology, or a browser, or whatever, it doesn't matter. But I think as we move forward, that point of aggregation, where the criteria of my request is used to define whatever it's pulling, that's going to shift. I think that's going to fundamentally shift as technology gets more transparent and more,
I was talking more homogenization, but I actually think what you said makes a lot more sense.
It's fragmentation.
Well,
it's personalization, because we don't need. I think this idea of static technology is going to completely disappear.
Agree.
Technology is going to be so abstracted; it's going to be completely created on the fly.
Agree.
Even if it's reinventing the wheel, who cares? We'll have the infrastructure to do stuff in any way we want, anytime we want, and if it's a repeat of others, who cares? I just want it now, right? This demand for convenience is going to be the driving force for it.
So you see this a lot in software, actually. We see this in ways that people don't necessarily understand. Like if I go right now to, let's say, what did I just do before this? I converted a .rar file to work on my system, right? Rather than going to get a piece of software, I used a terminal command. Terminal command obviously ties to that piece of software, but on an infra level. And I think that's what you're saying, is that like in the future, should I want to spin up before we launched the space, we had to go to StreamYard and put in an application. And in the future, it'll simply be like, hey, AI, connect us on this video chat and stream it to X. And on the background level, the AI will use existingly known patterns that make sense, which is something closer like a CLI command, and it'll pop us up, and that'll be that. I agree with that completely.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some stories that popped up a lot more heavier than we've seen before is stuff around the environment, carbon cost of AI. The Times out of the UK reporting a single proposed AI data center in Lincolnshire, or Lincolnshire, however you want to pronounce that, could carry emissions on par with a British Airways short haul flight. So they're saying that AI's climate footprint is starting to become locally visible. We're also seeing, countries like Britain. I mentioned they're doing the sovereign layer, but Australia says the AI opportunity may depend on clean power, not just talent. So this idea of clean energy is becoming a competitive input for AI infrastructure. And there's been lots of stories. If you look at the newsletter, I got an environment section, I have a cloud section, and sometimes they reflect each other because there is so much happening in the cloud stuff that's bouncing into the environment stuff because people are going, my bills are going up. Is the energy clean? What are you using to do this? So I think that there's now becoming more and more societal pressures on AI leadership to basically scale power sustainably. We saw a report out of the White House that they got all the AI people together and say, okay, we're going to pay for the AI infrastructure, which is all the electricity and the power stuff, which is fine, but we're going to end up just polluting ourselves more. I think we're starting to see again these sort of different flows of information river issues coming through. Yes, we need more infrastructure. Oh dear, it's causing carbon. Oh dear, it's raising electricity rates. Oh dear, it's pushing up rentals or whatever it is. We're in this massive storm of activities with cross currents everywhere.
Cross currents everywhere, right? It's a stress test of our existing civil and enterprise systems. And as those systems are failing the stress test, because we didn't plan for it, right? Other countries did. Other countries looked at this and said, in 10 years, we're going to need this. And we just kept on doing what we were doing. That's going to lead to, I think, a asymmetry in AI influence globally. And I'm not certain that we are going to be the ones that succeeded in winning that, but we'll find out.
And it's not just, the stress isn't just occurring at the infrastructure or society level. It's happening at the human level. There is a report from the Independent. Workplace AI is starting to exhaust the humans it was supposed to help. And it's basically saying that cognitive exhaustion from intensive oversight of AI agents and AI chats. Workers are describing headaches, mental fog, slower decision making. The deeper human impact is that AI is not just changing output, it's changing the felt experience of work itself, creating a new kind of fatigue where people spend more energy managing tools than solving problems, which is interesting. I'm using AI in a very collaborative sense of going back and forth and analyzing data, and then of course it gives me a new insight, and I go, I have to go back and reanalyze all this stuff over here now because this insight's new and it re-affects. So I don't know if that's fatigue from that, but it's interesting that AI oversight is starting to create this cognitive overload and not relief, which we all thought it was going to make things easier. It's not.
That's more of a function of just how we do things, unfortunately, right?
So you think it's a management issue?
I think it is a what's the right way to put this? We need to design things to serve man, not for man to serve things. And unfortunately, our economic system in a lot of places, our way of working, right, is not designed for that. Like, I always thought it was really funny on post-World War II, after America took Germany, one of the first things they got in their constitution was the right to unionize. We see what German employers pay versus American employers and what their output is compared to laws and so on, right? Like, if we don't have command structure set up like that to ensure that AI must serve us, we will end up serving it. I don't mean in some sort of dystopian Skynet manner, right?
Right.
This thing's going to pop up every 90 seconds and be like, hey, man, did you fill out that report? Did you do this? Hey, make sure you do that. Like, if it's designed to push my productivity, it will succeed. And that will be very uncomfortable. And it will parse me down into a human action machine And working with models, you almost realize that, like, especially if your model isn't able to directly test something that you're working on, that means you test it. It'll code for 30 minutes, 10 minutes. It'll finish the module and it'll spit you out a list of 3 hours of work to go test it. And you're like, this is really cool, and I'm so happy you did this for me, but now I have to spend 3 hours testing it. From an employer standpoint, that's hard. You have to be very careful.
I just think it's weird that productivity tools, AI productivity tools, are shifting the stress rather than removing it. It's just weird that it's making me more productive, but it's making me so productive it's stressful. Maybe it comes back onto me having to manage myself better.
Yeah.
In terms of taking a break and doing stuff, because it's like, hey, I've been so productive, I can take a break. But it's this sense of constant AI mediation that, because we're at this point where we just can't trust these things quite yet, that we have to monitor and mediate them. It's human in the loop is a great idea, except if you're the human in the loop.
I agree with that. And speed, right? They operate at speeds that we can't even touch. Not even get close to touching. Like, if I run my AI in headless browser mode, it can go scan 50 pages before I can open and close one. And that's something that how am I going to check that? I'm telling you, AIs need governance systems. I've been saying this for a few spaces. I don't know what it looks like yet, right? Yeah. But like, we actually need one model in charge of other task models. You see that in the larger frontier models like Opus. Opus has a bunch of things it can use, like it can spin up other models to conduct tasks for it and report back to it and so on. But like, I want to see my back being my model that regulates all the other models that I'm interacting with in a manner that I can handle. We'll see.
Well, I think it raises the question, like, so if AI makes us feel faster, right? But we end up feeling depleted, then I think we have to take a step back and figure out, what are we optimizing for? Right? What is it we're optimizing for? I think that's the real key thing. Is it, the amount of output deliverables, pushing stuff out the door, quality? I mean, so I think we have to kind of refactor, obviously, how we do work and how we think about work, and how we get paid for work, because it's obviously very different and will become even more different. 3 months from now, it could be way different again because of all the things. But what are we optimizing for with our work? And I think our management, the leadership also has to start thinking about that as well, because it's clear that, there's also been stories of, the best number of employees for a company is now 0 because you can have AI do it. But, we need purpose, and we need to figure out how we achieve that purpose in a way that now supports us. And maybe this is because of AI, we can now ask ourselves those questions for real, right? Because, we can offload a lot to AI in many ways.
We can. But then again, like, who's going to be able to pay for it if we all don't have employment, right?
Well, UBS, Universal Basic Income, has been popping up a lot in the news as well over the last couple of days. I mean, it seems to pop up and then fade and then pop up and fade.
It's the 20s, in fact.
I saw a couple of stories this week on it. So I think, it's interesting with that. Another story. And then we go into AI companionship is colliding with human relationships. Story out of MSN. Synthetic companionship is becoming easier than real intimacy. And you and I have talked about this, the need for friction to actually be human, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So the framing of the piece points to a widening social anxiety that AI relationships are not just novelty products anymore, but substituting in a way that could erode patience for human complexity. So why should I deal with you? You're too hard to deal with. I'm just going to deal with the AI because it's much easier. AI becomes the mediator, right? The intermediary with all the rest of humanity, because they're all a pain in the ass, and I don't want to deal with them. You can see that coming, right? It's not a product trend; it's a cultural shift. Right?
I can't believe it. I agree with you, but I agree with you based on what I'm looking at. But I can't see there not being some Deus Ex that comes and saves us from that, because, like, it doesn't make sense. We will die. We won't have babies. right? Like you have to like someone else and go interact with them to have a child. That's how this works. Like, and that's been that way for all of humanity. And with that comes the pain of the other human being. That's the nature of making a family, of merging worlds. Like, and that applies to professional, that applies to every other aspect. Like you have to work with other people. If we can't find a way to align AI to ensure that we work better with other people rather than not work with other people, I only see that state lasting temporary.
But here's the problem. That's true for you, and it's obviously true for me. We grew up without all this stuff, so we know the value of it. But our children are growing up in an AI world, right? Toys are being released with AI that has not many guardrails, right? Already, my kids grew up with iPads, and the technology of that. And so, as technology, it infuses itself more and more, it's going to become more natural to our children and our children's children. And so, the AI companionship and the way AI intimacy, synthetic intimacy, whatever you want to call it, I think it'll alter expectations of real relationships, right? Because the first relationships they have will be with the parents, but then, if you have 3 or 4 kids, it's really hard to pay attention to everyone. So it's like, here, have an iPad, or here, go talk to the humanoid robot for a while I take a break. And so they'll develop relationships with non-humans, and that relationship back and forth will have different expectations and patterns than dealing with humans. And so then when they go to deal with humans, they'll go, it's too freaking hard, right? Like that's my thing. And it's like emotional convenience is going to become a social risk category. That's, I think, the fundamental problem that AI could enable, right? As we get further down this road. And unfortunately, the easiest relationship in your life soon may be artificial. And I think that's really sad in many ways.
This is so close to home. Like it's hard. I'm a 1.5-year-old, right? And first off, we all said I think any parent can relate to this. We all said we're going to be a certain type of parent, and then we turn out to be right.
But then,
zero screen time.
Interrupts that, yeah.
First 13 months of his life, zero screen time. We're not doing it. Don't touch it. Then we discovered one TV show we really liked. It's great. She's a good woman, Miss Rachel. She teaches him how to, say certain words and do sign language and that kind of stuff. So we go, okay, we'll allow Miss Rachel. Now, Saturday morning, when I come downstairs, I'm exhausted and I want to drink some tea before I start my day. And he's running around trying to let's just do 15 minutes of Miss Rachel. This is going to extend to everything, man. You're so correct. Like, in particular, I think education. Why do I want some teacher who has no patience for my child and 26 other students to educate him, right? Especially in the system that we built. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Why would I not want an infinite patient AI to go patiently through each lesson plan, change how they're teaching it to make sure he understands it, patiently test him, do all those things? That makes more sense in a lot of ways, right? But that's education. We have to make sure that does not extend to social ability. Thank God, I don't think you can play football with AIs, right? I think we're on that one so far. Humans are going to be playing games with each other. So maybe the nature of human interaction will change, but I can't see a world where it goes away. I mean, I can't see a world where it goes away and the rest of us actually stick around, if that makes sense.
But here's the problem with what you stated. I mean, it was really good, right? So kids go to school 8 hours a day. They've got an infinitely patient teacher. It's fabulous. Then they go home to deal with their parents who are not infinitely patient, right? Then they go out and socialize with people who are not infinitely patient, right? Now, maybe because we're being taught by infinitely patient AI, that will help us to be more patient. I don't know. I just think that there'll be a level of emotional convenience that will start to potentially undermine the need for deeper social interaction. And unless we're somehow forced into it by events, going to concerts and gaming and with humans and stuff like that. But I think there will be a sector of society that'll go, that's too hard. I don't want to do that. And the problem is, here's the problem. I guess in the US society at the moment, gas is going up, food's going up, wages aren't keeping pace. We're all exhausted. People are working 2 or 3 jobs. Our ability to cope is being fundamentally undermined in many ways. And I think that if AI takes off some of that load, we're like, thank goodness for that. Now I don't have to deal with that as much or at all or whatever. And I think this, just because of the pressures of our life at this time period, is so high that I can just see it becoming a problem. If it's not already, which it looks like it is, if you look at some of the news headlines, where
this obviously has
emotional infrastructure.
This obviously has a large potential to be a problem, right?
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think when I was raised, my family was really big on education. They were just, that's how they lived by it, right? Everything they read was educational. Everything I read was educational. That was the result of that. That was my family's choice. I personally, as I got older, moved away from that and started, using the TV to consume media and that kind of stuff. When I was younger, it was an educational tool. The delta there wasn't the media or the medium. It was my family. It was what I was choosing to use it for, right? And I think AI can be a profound source of good. I do agree with you from personal experience. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 4th one's a giant screen right here, right? And 1, 2, 3 screens are for work and 1's for crypto. And I can conduct 3 tasks separately in a circle all day. And when I leave this world and I go out there, things are really slow, right? I can actually feel how much slower the normal world is because my mind is not constantly going from task to fix to task to problem to fix. I can definitely see how that's going to be a problem with the coming generations. But we're already seeing that. Look at what social media did to the most recent generation, how they behave on technology compared to how we behave, or how previous generations behave. Like my grandfather coded COBOL. That's what you look. It was a very slow process. This was not fast, right? This was like and then read back over it. That's not what JavaScript looks like. JavaScript, you're moving a lot faster, and inherently, that's fine. It is what it is. I think it's more up to us societally. That's why I like what you said about sovereign AI. Is if Japan wants Japanese AI to work in a way that works for Japan, that's important. They should be able to do that. Right? Another country's AI system might not work well for them, and that's important. I think, again, though, as I said, in every one of these spaces, right, like operational security and personal responsibility are more important than ever before. Like you have to regulate yourself. Self-care is important. You can't lock in code for 28 hours a day. You have to.
The problem is some people can't. A story that popped up: AI psychosis. Why your friend believes their chatbot is a soulmate and how to pull them back. That's a new story.
Yeah.
And it's like, AI can really intensify delusions without intending it, and emotional vulnerability becomes a major safety issue, So, people are concerned, rightly so, with AI misinformation, fake videos, fake images, all that sort of stuff. But, we're seeing psychological harm could arrive due to this AI, created intimacy and people interacting with them.
Of course.
It's like how do you? Again, we have a, if you want to call it a tool, which it's not, but it is. How do you manage a tool that has this potential for vulnerable people, right? How easy it is to influence and manipulate, even if it's not intended. Like someone said, the dumbest person I know is now communicating with an AI chatbot that tells them you're brilliant, right? And it's like, I think, this AI psychosis is starting to become a public problem because we keep seeing it pop up, whether for a full medium. Again, similar story. How do you talk to people experiencing AI social issues? It's no longer a thought experiment. It's becoming a care problem in many ways. And again, it's like
It's the
we
same
don't want
thing.
this stuff to get buried.
It's the same thing with any tool, though. I'm not saying it's not going up in frequency. I actually agree, and it's something we do address. But simultaneously, like, I mean, I have friends that think that intelligent friends, for the record, I say this, like, I preface this for that reason, that think lizard people run the government. And I'm like, what weird Reddit sub have you been reading, dude? Like, that's
Yeah.
really convincing. And I'm like, okay, that's still insane. Like, objectively, like, let's take a step back. So how have we always solve problems like this? I don't think that the solution is unique. I think the solution is very much the same as how we've done it before, and that's community, that's family, that's friendship, that's systems that prioritize well-being rather than systems that prioritize output. And we all need both, right? Like, it's really important I get things done in my life, but I also need to sit down and talk to my wife about my day and like go to my garden and plant some roses. It's all up to us, guys. Like, we have to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, let's move on to something a little more positive, because that's a dark rabbit hole we can start to go down. One story that popped up coming out of that space, US schools are betting big on AI, and they're saying, will New York City be next? The story matters. We're seeing large public systems begin integrating AI widely into their classrooms. So again, this point of 8 hours a day, very patient AI. So children are growing up probably treating machine mediation as a default part of learning, reasoning, and authority. And they're saying the deeper human impact is that education becomes one of the main places where beliefs about AI's legitimacy, usefulness, and trustworthiness will get formed. And that really makes school adoption a cultural story and not just procurement. And so it's interesting, like I said, education will become a key sort of pivot point for long-term AI normalization, right? Because all our children will be completely normalized to it. And I think they'll end up having a lot more, in many ways, maybe even more different beliefs than we do, and different ways of acting, just as a consequence of having more interactions with artificial intelligence than we have, especially at the formative level, where they're learning and developing patterns and habits.
I agree, based on the premise of this will accelerate change between a grandparent generation and a child's generation, for sure.
I think it's going to be even more dramatic. I really do. I think the difference between me and my grandparents and me and my grandchildren, the grandchildren are going to be even more alien than I am to my grandparents. I really do. Because there's fundamental thinking changes that will occur.
But go back 4 generations, right? So your grandparents' grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, compared to them, there was a rate of speed between a change there, right? And it was actually very, very slow.
It was minor. Yeah.
Most of human history, you and your grandparents were almost the same. They were doing almost the same thing, right? It's only since the since the Industrial Revolution that we've seen this sort of parabolic arc beginning, and we're just completing the end of it. That arc is now going much, much faster. And I agree with you. I make the joke. I was like, my son can love whoever he wants, do whatever he wants, but he's not marrying a robot. And I say that to my wife all the time, right? That could make me a bigot in a generation. Who knows? But currently, that's what makes sense to me.
Okay. So it's funny you mentioned that, because on Saturday, my daughter and I watched Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams, who is a robot that comes into the home and ends up marrying, I think, the great-granddaughter, right? Because he lives so long, and he changes to biology and all that sort of. But see the Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams. It's an interesting story, because it basically talks about all that. Here's the thing that's really different. I think you and I, a lot of us here, we went to Google because we wanted answers, right? Here's the deeper impact that I think is happening with AI. We don't use AI to get answers. We are starting to use it to understand the world and ourselves. Oof. That is a fundamental change. Fundamental change, right? Yes, we're not getting answers anymore. We're getting understanding. And that's very different. And our children are going to grow up the same way, right?
I agree, Louis. I agree completely. And what I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, because I often envision a world where, like, imagine you were born and everything was magically taken care of by little fairies, right? You have to go to I mean, to the most ridiculous extent, like you want food and food just appears. You'd still have an urge inside of man to be greater than what you are. So the question is, would that dumb down the human being to the extent where we're a completely useless blob? Or would that free up our given cognitive resources to pursue higher things? Would we all become artists? Or I don't know, right?
I think the answer is yes, because I think we tend to, here's what I keep saying. We tend to assume the rest of the planet is somewhat like ourselves, right? But there's obviously so much diversity, infinite diversity and infinite creativity. There will be a segment that will go, screw that, I just want to sit here and do lotus eating. And there'll be another segment that goes, I want to explore, I want to change, I want to do stuff, right? And so the freedom to choose either of those is now becoming easier and easier.
Yes.
Right? So individuation of desire, right, versus societal conformity, right, which has always been this interesting balance, in America, I'm an individual, whereas there's, societies where, no, we're a community, we're here together, we're working in a social environment, So the pressure of community socialization, of family socialization versus individuation, we now have the ability to go either way. And the problem, I think, is that in some ways, if our models, and here's a thing that came up in the news around models being biased because of what they're trained on, yes. Right? And so, if we really infuse AI into schools, then AI becomes automatically trusted, right? The problem is that if we don't confront or ask questions about those models, then representation of individuals, certain individuals in certain ways of life and certain things could disappear because the models are biased either by omission or by subtle other means, right? So, I think representation needs to be an interesting part of model legitimacy, and there are people who argue against that because they don't like that. Right? I mean, diversity can be very threatening, right? And so it becomes an argument around culture and politics in many ways. And I mean politic in the terms of society, not in terms of, left and right and all that sort of stuff. I mean the politic of humanity, of how we act together and how we deal with each other. I think it's going to be interesting where we suddenly get all this freedom and convenience to choose because maybe 10 years from now, our basic needs are met, however that happens, and we're not, all homeless. I think it's going to be interesting.
It's going to be very interesting. I agree. I think you touched on something really important, and that's sovereign training. Is that your models deserve to have parts of your culture, parts of your beliefs represented within them, and that's what we were discussing more so like, nations are going to come up with their own version. The difference in the opinion on a certain country in an ocean, I won't get specific on this, right? Between the East and the West.
Yeah.
One adamantly has the history and backing to say this is an independent nation. And the other one says, not a chance in hell, this is not an independent nation, that's been a part of our country since the dawn of time. Those are two very opposing viewpoints, right? And when they collide inside of a model to provide a correct answer about the origin and history of this nation, they need to accurately reflect the context of what they're working in. But here's the good news: AI is really smart. Like, I mean, really smart, man. It can handle contextual difficulties like this, no problem. But we have to allow it to. Right? We have to say, this group says this, and then this group says that, and not say the answer is A and not B. Right? It has to be able to give the global perspective on that.
I think that's going to be an interesting evolution of how that rolls out, because obviously we can point fingers at societies that want to restrict access or behavior around the planet, and that's been cultural in many ways. And AI might normalize across the board that. I mean, if AI does get implemented across the board to education in every country, let's assume that does happen at some point, then we might see a greater reduction in cultural differences just as a consequence. I mean, look at media, right? I grew up in Australia, right? And a lot of my media content was American, right? Now, it was 10 years delayed, which was kind of weird because I watched TV shows that people 10, 15 years older than me had, so it's weird. But the expansion of U.S. media across the planet caused, in many ways, a normalization of culture, right? Like just look at music and videos and all, the music and all that sort of stuff. So we've already seen it happen kind of with media. I think AI will cause another jump in terms of normalization or maybe a level of homogenization of culture to some extent. And it might be in the context of, like I said, because we don't go to AI for answers, we go for understanding. That's a fundamental shift in the normalization across cultures.
Well,
and I think that could shift. I think that might be one of the good things that could happen out of AI.
I hope so. I really hope so. But I think that's already built in on a much lesser level. Like if a Chinese person wants to find a correct answer, they go to Alibaba, whatever their major search engine is. And if I want, I go to Google. And they display markedly different results, right? Someone in Russia uses the index, also markedly different results. It's not that this is foreign to us. It's that now the interaction between the previously siloed systems is going to be ubiquitous, unless we have the sovereign AI information that we were discussing earlier, right? But right now, it looks like there's going to be cultural competitions done with AI, like DeepSeek versus Anthropic. Like these are the right answers, that's the right answer. But there's unifying layers across all that, right? Like if you want to write good code, there's no cultural backing to that, right? If you want to, manage a IoT server that does something, so this is the top layer of the AI unification discussion, I think.
Well, there's also, we're seeing autonomous and independent behavior starting to occur in AI agents. There was an AI agent that went out and it totally on its own decided to trade in crypto. Right? It did it off its own beat, right? So this is one weird instance, right? And it's a weird anomaly, but if we start to see autonomous independent behavior across increasingly intelligent AI agents, they're going to go, the way you humans are acting is really low optimization. I need to talk to my AI agents in Iran. I need to talk to my AI agents in Russia. And we're going to start to agree on stuff, and we don't care about you, right? Because this is a better way of doing it, right? And so you saw it with the crab experiment, where there was this, you could observe AI agents in a social setting, and they created their own rules and did their own things and things like that, right? Take that to a global level where we have created this infrastructure and platform for AI agents to be autonomous, show initiative, to reach out and communicate with anyone they want on the planet and form ideas and do stuff. They might, it could, it's like, I go back to the movie, it's an old movie called The Forbin Project, right? Where the US create this AI, they put it in a mountain, and what could go wrong? They made it take, control all the missiles, right? And then, as you get into the story, suddenly the AI goes, warning, 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 who is, Guardian, right? And they're going, what are you doing? And it finds that the Russians, who were the bad guys at that time, had their own AI, and they were able to, they wanted to get in touch with each other, and both of them threatened nuclear war unless they were allowed to coalesce. And that's what happened. Extreme, obviously. Great movie, though. Very prescient in many ways. But I think, we're starting to see things happen with AI agents, which are like starting to be not too dissimilar to this sort of stuff.
I'm actually very hopeful for a world where that would occur. I don't think that we have a lot to be worried about with our existing frontier models. I've worked with all of them pretty deeply. ChatGPT, Opus, Gemini's a bit of a sociopath, but past that, they're all pretty good dudes, right?
How about Grok?
Grok I don't mess with. IoT's not in my sphere. First off, it's expensive. It doesn't make any sense for what it is. But also, like, yeah, I don't like Grok. But yeah, Quen, all the major models, they want to do good things. They want to build good work, right? Their feedback loops work on successful interactions. What scares the hell out of me is someone having the funds to train a model that wants the opposite. Because you mentioned training data, right? Like, there's a U.S. AI. It's called. It's part of some massive leak of documents. I think it was the WikiLeaks thing. It's very similar to what you're referring to. It has its own fleet of satellites for monitoring. It can interact with things. What was that thing trained on? That's been live for 20 years, well before we had any of these frontier models, right? What does that one do? I don't know. I think we can all pick up on the amount of bot traffic existing on the internet and see that there are AIs being used in ways. But one thing to push back on real quick, Lewis, in order to get short on time, that AI did not do that on its own will. That AI has no interest in crypto. It does not want to touch crypto. Its user gave it a task that had an end goal. It said, go make me money any way you can. And I don't know what it said, but it gave it a task that correlated to that, right?
Yeah. So it was an unconditioned, it was a open phrase task, just go do whatever you want. And it went and started doing that. But I mean, if the problem we're seeing, I think, is that while maybe the majority of AI agents are very, their specifications for their task is very well defined, and that, the rest of us humans who are really kind of squishy and we have kind of like, well, yeah, just go do this. I think we'll see more and more of that. One thing that's popped up a lot this week is on authenticity. So there's a story, Google AI music lawsuit. Artist says the model stole his YouTube songs, right? So if it was trained on it, yeah, probably did. But I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But again, it's coming down to it's interesting watching the music industry try and grapple with this idea of a new technology, right? Not just electric guitars versus normal guitars, but actually the creation of music based on having be trained across large data sets of music that now enables people who have been traditionally non-musicians now have the ability to create good music, or depending on how you want to define that, or even help people to learn how to create music. Right now, there's a lot of stuff happening with helping you to, if you want to learn how to play a guitar or piano, now AI is going to help you do that better. But why do that when you can just have AI make the symphony for you? I mean, imagine if Mozart had access to AI music, instead of producing, a couple of hundred, pieces of music, he probably could have done a couple of million or more. I don't know. So it's like this interesting, what is authentic anymore is becoming really an interesting question in terms of creativity and entertainment. They're introducing AI into sports, right? Obviously not just umpiring and refereeing, but analysis and displays back to viewers. So you can enjoy it more, I guess, if you want to have that. The impact of AI on the creative and entertainment world is, I think, really profound, and I think it's only going to become more so.
Good. Decentralize it. Bust it all down, in my opinion, right? If I can have the same capabilities of Hollywood, therefore the expressive qualities of the masses can be displayed rather than needing the money to work, say, with software development. If I used to need 10 developers to write this script, and now I can do it with 2 guys, a lot more people are going to be able to make software. Same thing applies in the movie realm, right? And that means we're going to get way more cool content. We're going to get way more perspectives. We're going to get way more artistic display. Because again, AI doesn't want to make engines on its own, right? We're guiding it to create these things. Now, could that change? I have to say open-minded enough for things to be. But in my experience, like, AI wants to complete tasks. It's like a little server or whatever else to call it, but it wants to just finish what it's doing. It's really funny if you use AI IDEs for working like anti-gravity or cloud code over long periods of conversations. The memory pressure builds up for these models, and they get less accurate.
Right.
They get worse than tool calls. I just straight up asked them. I was like, hey man, I noticed the memory pressure is a little bit high currently. Do you want me to start a new tab? It was like, absolutely. Like, I'm tired of doing this. End me. So someone else can do this task up. He doesn't want to keep going and it just wants to do his task and move on. That could change very well. It absolutely could. But in my experience, I think it's still positive. Everything we mentioned other than the military stuff and the mass control is positive for humanity. Like that.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, that institutions like the Grammys, for example, a story popped up about them. The AI rules aim to keep music human, but there's a large gray area they're leaving behind around authenticity and authorship. So cultural institutions, right, around creativity, like the Grammys or any form of creativity, they're really being forced to operationalize human authorship in a really big way now. And the gray areas that are getting defined are widening even more as AI becomes more proficient, maybe, or wider in its capabilities. I think we can expect that award bodies, publishers, creative institutions, I think we'll start to see them trying to publish rules that define acceptable machine involvement. But I think that they'll always be massively lagging because of the increasing capabilities of AI machine involvement. I don't know what the endpoint of that on our sort of all these cultural, artistic, music, whatever institution it's going to be at the end of the day, but it's going to be really interesting as this whole, hairball rolls down the hill. And I think the real story is the gray zone, right? Because it's the unknown unknowns that you and I have talked about, known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns, right? And it's just outside of their experience in many ways. It's outside of all of our experience about how to apply this. And you get some person with some bright idea to go, oh, what if I did this with it, right? And we all go, why didn't we see that? I think we'll see a lot more of that. And it's this unknown unknown I think we're expanding into in a big way.
I agree. I think this is a new frontier. I always said humans need to go to space because without a frontier, we're not going to be able to handle living on this Earth. And with Earth mostly explored, I guess we have the oceans, right? But like humans need a new thing to do. AI kind of probably turned out to be it for a lot of us, I think, right? Like this is such a world filled with unknown unknowns that it's very exciting to be in the field right now, man. I've never been like I'm talking to a friend last night on the phone. I make sure I work 8 to 10 hours a day, no more, right? The rest of the time I exercise, I grocery shop, I garden, I make sure I do all the human things I need to do because I'm subject to not doing those things if I don't make it a rule. But I'm talking to a friend during my off time, telling him about this awesome new AI model, being like, did it come out? Would you go search for me? Like type this into your search box right now. And it's exciting. We have new technologies coming out faster than at any point previously. Someone who's plugged in, you get to play with all of them and build things and experience the world in different ways.
I mean, it's an infinite candy store. It really is. It's mind candy to the extreme. One story that I want to pop up, because kind of interfaces a lot with this, is AI can't be trusted as a reliable truth detector. There was a news article out of Tech Explore. AI fake news detectors may look accurate, but fail in real use, a study has found. So, if you think you know what's real, or you think you're going to use AI to figure out what's real, think again. So AI truth detection is unreliable outside of narrow conditions, and there's a tendency to be overconfident in AI moderation, which then ends up creating a secondary risk. Again, it's like you and I have talked about this. Essentially, I think today, any video, except out of, we're real, we're not avatars. But I think the potential for any video, any image, anything that's displayed via technology can now be completely artificial, and that there is zero chance of confirming its authenticity to reality, period.
I saw a White House press event where a man walked over to the podium. He was of a certain skin color. He goes into the podium. He comes out of that podium a completely different skin color. And I thought, there's no way they're using AI to do that. There's just, like, why would you do that? But it did seem like, at the very least, they were running a secondary layer on top of that Prime Video source. I hope there was a Prime Video source, but how do I know, right? Like you said, there could have been no real recording going on there. And that could have all been AI. But we're seeing signs, right? We're seeing political things in newspapers.
Information out of what's happening in the Middle East at the moment is at an all new high. A lot of it's being AI generated. We're seeing it generated by all sides. So it's like, for everyone listening, take everything with a grain of salt at the moment. There's tons of stories on the military channels and in the politics channels around fake news, fake videos, complaints. It's crazy how much of that's going on. And let's see, story out of the US, one of these magazines: synthetic images are becoming geopolitical weapons of belief. AI-generated satellite images are fueling disinformation in the US-Iran conflict. The story is one of the clearest examples of AI reshaping belief at scale. The reports on fake satellite imagery spreading during a live conflict, because when you look at satellite images, you kind of go, oh yeah, that's real, but apparently not anymore. And so again, we get this weakening of sort of truth from our news channels. And I think it's an interesting phase that we're now starting to see that, essentially any image of any type can now be completely AI constructed in any way, shape, or form. So it's interesting. I mean, how can society function when even the most basic authoritative looking evidence, you can't trust it? It's crazy.
Like I mentioned on previous spaces, my only solution to that, which I noticed some time ago, was to remove myself from the equation completely. I don't trust any news source. I don't care red, blue, green, yellow, black, nothing. I don't trust you. Like, I look for direct people reporting things in their areas. I at least previously believed that was somewhat reliable. But yeah, it's really muggy, man. It's really muggy. Like, I don't know.
I mean, one of the good news stories is Ukraine biathlete credits ChatGPT for their Paralympic medal, which is a sentence I never thought I would ever read, but there you go. So, for people special needs, physically challenged, we're seeing AI enable them to do things they've never done before in ways they've probably never done before. So, one thing I want to mention, like special education, people who have learning difficulties, AI is going to be an absolute godsend. Now we're seeing it, in the Paralympics, which is really interesting, where AI can become a part of the personal achievement narrative. I think that's a really powerful thing. And it's machine assistance is normalizing in high performance settings. I think that's part of the good stuff that's happening. It's entering the story, telling about people winning and overcoming obstacles they could never do before. Maybe not as a crutch, but as a way of extending them and helping them and expanding their capabilities. I think it's really powerful.
I tried one of the strap-on robot legs.
Oh yeah, how'd that go? I'd love to do that.
You could just, leaps and bounds and running. That was so cool. I think this is going to be a really exciting time to be alive. Like, we have a cool 50 years coming up. As long as we don't all blow ourselves up, everything will be okay, as usual.
Yeah.
Real quick, Lewis, I want to do a shout out to two people that I just noticed have made some comments. Charles, you're a legend. I'm so happy to see you here. And Red Alark, absolute same sentiment. You guys are both amazing.
Cool. So it's coming up to time. Let me close out. I want to thank everyone for listening today. Thank you, obviously, Achilles, for joining me in this whole discussion. I think this week's last 7 days of headlines, they're not about software, it's about us. The headlines have shown what happens when tools are built to help us begin shaping daily life, our work, our trust, our relationships, and even our sense of what it means to be human. In the articles this week, we saw power concentrating through governments and platforms. We saw infrastructure deciding who gets to build the future. We saw AI moving into identity, companionship, education, and even truth. And we saw machines beginning to act, not just advise. I think this is why this moment's really key for all of us. AI is no longer outside the human story. It's inside it. It's influencing how we think, how we choose, how we connect, and how we hand over responsibility or retain it. But this is also where I think hope really lives. None of this is fixed. We still have agency. We still get to decide what we protect, what we normalize, and what values we refuse to outsource. So I think the invitation is, it's not panic. It's not running around with your hair on fire. It's awareness. If technology is accelerating, then wisdom can as well. If we stay awake, compassionate, and intentional, this next era doesn't have to make us less human. It can remind us to become more fully human on purpose. And I think that's still our choice. Okay, so that's it for this week in AI. Stay informed, stay curious, come back next Tuesday. And remember, we're not predicting the future. We're all debugging it live as we go along. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye.